Hey everyone, welcome back to another Finding True North. My name is Ryan.
And my name's Olivia, and welcome to the 16th episode of Finding True North, where we are sharing the pivotal lessons and moments to help you navigate your career.
So Finding True North started because during the pandemic, people don't have access to career advice or to hear different stories from different professionals. So we did this as a way of connecting people to inspiring career stories. And Olivia, who do we have today?
Well, today we have a recommended guest. If you tuned in previously into the series, you would have seen a cameo of him in Maheen's episode of Finding True North, and Sam is a guest that Maheen recommended. So Sam is a platform engineer at Novastone Media, and he is particularly in DevOps. So DevOps isn't really a topic we've really covered in Finding True North, so it should be super exciting to cover it on this episode. Ryan's going to tell you now how you can ask a question to Sam in this episode.
Yep, so throughout the session, you can ask a question through the comments section, or we will be using slido.com a bit later for a poll, and you can also ask a question via slido.com. We'll get all the details in a couple slides actually about how to participate on Slido, and the format's going to be a presentation from Sam and then lots of time for Q&A. So over to you, Sam.
Thank you, guys. So just to start on some of the key values that I've used to navigate throughout my career. The first one being passion. Does this bring you joy? So I think it's important to choose a career that you enjoy doing as much as possible, because it's likely that you'll spend a lot of years in that field. We spend the majority of our lives at work. So the aim is to enjoy it as much as possible. The second value that I use to navigate throughout my career is that failure is normal. It's okay and normal to fail. It's what you do afterwards that's important. So failure is normal and inevitable. It's something that won't set you back from your goals as long as you learn from your failures. So you never want to see your failures as a roadblock. Instead, see failures as a learning opportunity to grow. And the third one, which really resonates with me a lot, is stay hungry, stay foolish. Never be satisfied with what you know or where you are in life. Do things that people say cannot be done, or at least try. I think it's important that in our careers we avoid being stagnant in our jobs, just because it leads to boredom at work and limited learning opportunities. So you want to try and push yourselves as much as possible, even if that means changing roles or finding a new job elsewhere. And the last key value is discipline equals freedom. And again, this one resonates a lot with me. I've actually got this posted up on my wall, and it's something that I look at every day. To get to a place of freedom is through discipline. This is something that is a book and a quote from Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEALs. So freedom is what everyone wants and aims for, but the only way to get to a place of freedom is through discipline. If you aim to achieve financial freedom, you will need financial discipline. And I think there's a misconception of what a discipline is. Discipline doesn't have to be hard or unachievable. It could be small things that will help you achieve your goals. So with financial freedom, it could just be saving, an extra 20 quid a month. Something that I try and do daily is make my bed every day, which I fail at doing, which is shocking. Now on to the overview of my career. And so, I started off at Richmond College. And first of all, I actually, before joining Richmond, I didn't know what I wanted to do in terms of subjects. So I ended up copying what my sister had done, and she went through the medical route. So I picked the sciences. So I picked biology, chemistry, psychology, and IT. And that was probably a big mistake. The sciences weren't for me. I didn't do well, but I did well in IT. So I decided the following year to do a BTech in IT, and I haven't looked back since. I really enjoyed it, and I could tell it was something that I was good at. So some advice for some of the listeners, do what you think works for you and something that you like doing instead of following your siblings. And in 2012, I ended up joining Brunel University to study computer science. So shout out to Brunel. And again, there was a little bit of misinformation from my part where I wanted to do something which involved more software development. So building mobile apps and websites. But I quickly learned that computer science also included a lot of maths, a lot of algorithms, and a lot of theory. So it was quite well balanced, and it definitely did benefit me in the future. But I assumed it was going to be pure software development. And something that Brunel are really good at, they push internship years. So I decided to apply for an internship at General Electric, G Capital. And it's something that for me was probably one of my first pivotal moments, because I got to actually see how the things that I'm learning in my degree is being applied in the workforce. And one key thing that I learned was what I didn't want to do in the future. So my role was an IT project manager, even though I was craving to do more technical work. So a lot of the other interns in my class, we all decided to work on a project together, and we ended up building a mobile app using some web development frameworks, which was really cool. It was a great experience for me. And from that, I knew that I wanted to be the one building the mobile apps, building the technologies, and just getting my hands dirty. And at the end of my internship, I applied for the graduate program. And I think at the time there was around maybe 30 plus interns battling it out for just probably a few limited spots. So unfortunately, I didn't get the role. So when I graduated, I was probably unemployed for around a year. And during that time, I decided to basically try and upskill myself with some of my programming languages. So I decided to build websites for some local businesses for free, for my dad's business, basically trying to enhance my portfolio so that hopefully in the future I could land a job. And I decided to apply for a coding bootcamp in 2017 called Sparta Global. And for those of you that don't know what bootcamps are, they are basically around 3 months of intense learning. At the time, I decided to come on as a web developer because for some sort of reason, I wanted to do, web development. I thought building mobile apps was my thing. And they had quickly launched at the time a DevOps course. And I quickly did some research into what DevOps was and how companies like Amazon and Netflix do DevOps. And that sold me straight away. And I decided to enroll in that course with the bootcamp. And there was only 3 of us at the time. And again, another pivotal moment where I was exposed to so many different technologies like cloud providers like Amazon Web Services, learning new programming languages in Ruby, learning infrastructure as code. And it really equipped me for the future. And moving on to then, 3 months after leaving the bootcamp, I applied for a role at Cancer Research UK as a junior Linux sysadmin. And that was actually quite an interesting time because before I started working there, during my interview process, I was interviewed by my former manager, and it was during the technical tests. So he had drawn up their software architecture, and he was basically going through their systems and asking me questions about their systems. And I didn't know 90% of what he was talking about. And I was very honest at the time. I did say, I don't really know what you're saying right now, but you're going to get someone who's really passionate, who's driven, and someone who's eventually going to contribute to the team. And luckily enough, they hired me as a junior. So during my time at Cancer Research, my main role was around supporting cancer researchers, internal and external websites, and Linux infrastructure. Again, it was a great experience for me. I was exposed to so many different technologies, and it's something that I'm very grateful for. And a year later, I applied and landed the senior Linux sysadmin role. And this was completely new to me, being a senior, where the focus was more around taking solutions from design to production. So much more decision making and mentoring juniors in the team. It was something that I valued highly. And also during that year, I was part of the Bain network, which Maheen, who was a previous guest, was also a part of. And it was used to basically be a safe space for BAME employees to share their experiences, to support each other, and to raise changes to senior leadership. And then lastly, last year, I ended up joining Novastone as a platform engineer. And what we do at Novastone, we build a white label messaging solutions for high value client interactions in the financial services, legal, and healthcare. And this was a little different for me, where I previously worked in bigger companies with massive hierarchies and org structures. But at Novastone, it's more of a startup-y vibe, which introduces different challenges, but some benefits like being in a flat structure, which I think I prefer a lot more now. But so far, my time has been great at Novastone. I've been exposed to some of the latest and greatest tech with infrastructure as code, containerization, serverless, and building cloud native solutions. Now moving on to the poll. The question of the day is, do you need a degree to start a career in technology? Now, this is something that I debate a lot of my friends and colleagues on about quite a lot. So I'm not gonna try and sway the audience, but I think this is quite a relevant question with what's going on in today's climate.
I think it's a great question, and to take part, just visit slido.com and use the code FTN. You can answer the poll, and also you can start populating some questions. So what we'll do is we'll come back to the answers of this poll later on in the session. Throughout the rest of the slides, you can see the link slido.com and the code FTN just on the bottom of the screen. So I'll let you, Sam, carry on.
Cool. Thank you, Ryan. Now on to my pivotal moment. So I decided to take a quote from B.F. Skinner, who's a psychologist. And the quote is, "A failure is not always a mistake. It may simply be the best one can do under the circumstances. The real mistake is to stop trying." And as I explained in my career paths, I've encountered a lot of different roadblocks, whether it's doing A-levels and not doing well in those, and changing to a different course, whether it's applying for the graduate role and not obtaining that role. I think it's really important to not see failure as the be all and end all, but seeing failure as an opportunity to progress, to apply your failings to then hopefully be your success in the future. So yeah, this is something that I'm all for. A failure is never always a mistake. So now on to what is DevOps. Sometimes I hate using the word DevOps because, yeah, so many people have different meanings for it. But at face value, DevOps does mean development and operations, but there's a lot more meaning behind it. So DevOps is the practice of operations and development engineers participating in the entire lifecycle, from design through to the development process and through to production. So what this is saying is that DevOps is an ethos. It's a way of working between everyone participating in the software lifecycle to produce rapid growth in delivering to your customers at the end. And I've also got two different quotes on what DevOps is. So one from Amazon Web Services. So DevOps is the combination of cultural philosophies, practices, and tools that increases an organization's ability to deliver applications and services at high velocity. So again, some of the key takeaways on that is that DevOps is a philosophy, is a set of practices that is used throughout the organization to deliver applications at a high or rapid speed. And the second quote is from the Phoenix Project, and I definitely recommend anyone who wants to learn more about DevOps to read the Phoenix Project. It's a very easy read. It's not like other technical books. And the quote is, it's product management, development, IT operations, and even information security, all working together and supporting one another. So again, to highlight that unification, that collaboration between all of the teams to achieve one goal. So what does DevOps involve? So executing DevOps effectively requires all teams to take shared responsibility of the rapid and safe delivery of software to the end customer. So again, having that shared responsibility between the team, but then also emphasizing speed in delivering to the customer is quite key. And for DevOps to be effective, I've highlighted two things that I feel like are important. One of which we got from the last slide as well was collaboration. So collaboration between teams that are traditionally worked in silos. So traditionally operations and development were siloed apart. And now there is more of a collaboration between the teams, not just those teams, but in other teams. And that's what you see from successful DevOps teams. And the second point is a set of practices that accelerates the process of automating the deployment of code and operations to release software faster using the following. Continuous integration and delivery. So that's CI/CD. And this is a method of frequently delivering changes and improvements to the end customer. You've got infrastructure as code. So now this is the code that is used to provision and build your servers and other infrastructure, which makes up the entire software, your entire software architecture. You've got automation. Now, this is manual tasks that need to be automated away to ensure speed and rapid development. And then you've got continuous testing. Now, this is testing at every stage of the software lifecycle to obtain faster feedback times. Now on to the three things to get started in DevOps. The first that I've highlighted is Linux. Microsoft is also a thing, but Linux is a lot more flexible and scalable. One thing you will see from a lot of tech companies and companies who are moving more into the DevOps space is that a lot of the operating systems they use for their servers are Linux based. Again, it's open source, is used a lot more by the community. So it's definitely something worth upskilling on if you want to get started in DevOps. Another is a programming language. I put Python or Golang. A programming language is highly valued. This is something that I sort of neglected at the start of my career. Traditionally, as a sysadmins don't really like to program, and there's a distinction between knowing how to code or program compared to scripting. With scripting, that's literally just, you can get lines of code from online, from Stack Overflow, and hack those into a script, and you don't really understand the flow of it. Whereas a programming language is understanding the different methodologies and rules behind that language and using it to achieve your goals or solve a problem. And lastly, a cloud provider. So I've listed Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, or Azure. And I say cloud provider just because now most companies are moving away from on-prem solutions. Cloud providers provide scalability, observability, flexibility, and reliability. And they're a lot cheaper to use than on-prem solutions. So if you want that advantage of deploying at speed to your customers, then using a cloud provider is definitely the way forward. And lastly, 3 things I've learned since starting a career in DevOps. The first one is, start programming. There's a lot of online resources which can teach you how to code. I've recently finished a Golang course in Udemy because I'm trying to upskill myself with Golang. I think it's a pretty cool programming language, but there are plenty of free ones to use as well, like YouTube. There's so many things on YouTube that can be leveraged and used to help you start programming. The second is working on personal projects. Personal projects help you learn skills you didn't know you needed, and they give you a chance to learn new frameworks and different programming languages as well. And lastly, keeping on theme with failure. Failure can be success if you learn from it. Never see failure as the end. Make sure you learn from your failures because those lessons will lead to your success. And I think now it's time for Q&A.
Thank you very much, Sam. Do you know what? I think this session is so timely because I've had, over the last couple of days and even today, some one-to-ones with students, and some of the questions they were asking me, I now want to ask you. As a reminder to everyone else watching who's just joined us, you can ask questions through the comments section or on slido.com using the code FTN. So I'm going to kick off with a question that I had earlier today. So you mentioned personal projects.
Yeah.
And even I gave some advice as well to students saying, do you know what, personal projects is a good way to get started, especially if you're not employed and you want to get employed. My question is, do you remember what maybe your first personal project was, or is there one that really stands out? Because I think giving it some life of what it was can inspire other students, I think.
Yeah. So my first personal project that I worked on was a website for my dad's company. It's a private nursing agency company. And at the time, he employed someone else to build like a WordPress website. And I just thought I could do it a lot better. It took me about maybe 3 months to build it, 3 to 4 months to build it, whereas now it probably take me a lot quicker. But yeah, for me, it was such a pivotal moment because all of the roadblocks that I encountered during the developing of that website would also have happened if I was employed. So you're also gaining a lot of value by taking on personal projects because a lot of the problems that you encounter, you didn't know you would before. And I'd even go far to say you can starting personal projects is very good. You don't always need to finish. I've started a ton of personal projects that I haven't finished yet, but it's the act of going through that process which is quite invaluable.
So we've had another question come in actually. Okay. How do you build resiliency for failure?
Oh, that's a good question. How do you build resiliency through failure? I think that comes down to a lot of self-belief as well. I think everyone at some point has failed, and everyone has also recovered from that failure. So it's understanding that if you failed at a particular task or in an exam or in a course or, you know, during your time at work, understanding that that isn't the be all and end all, that life still goes on, and basically trying to find the positives from your failings is what builds resiliency. Because the more and more you fail, the more and more you realize, actually, I can move on from this. Actually, this isn't the be all and end all. I can, you know, push through or take a different route instead.
Olivia, do you want to ask the next question that's come in?
Oh, is it by the...
Yeah. Through the comments.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I can see. Well, to be fair, I was seeing lots of congratulations, Sam. So thank you so much for talking on Fighting to North. I have a question that's come in. It is, in what ways do you think teams such as products can be more involved in the DevOps ethos?
Ooh, that is a very tough question. I think I know who that came from as well.
The name begins with the T, if
Yeah,
that
that's
okay.
I'm not gonna say I know who that was. So how do I feel? Can you repeat the question again, please?
In what ways do you think teams such as product can be more involved in the DevOps ethos?
I think it comes down to the culture of the company. So for someone like myself as a platform engineer, being a lot closer to the product team I think is key, where you can flush out problems during the design phase of your solutions, instead of introducing engineers at the later stage. I think introducing them at the beginning helps a lot more, because communicating with your product team and understanding what we're both trying to accomplish, I think is vital. So getting that common understanding earlier, I think, is key.
Just a kind of a follow-on question to that. So you got things like Agile, which has the Agile manifesto, but
Yeah.
for DevOps, what is the ethos? Like, is there any kind of equivalent for DevOps?
That's a tricky one to answer, because Agile isn't DevOps and DevOps isn't Agile, but there are the ethos of DevOps and Agile can live together, if you know what I mean. It isn't saying we use Kanban or we use Agile, so we can't do DevOps. DevOps is purely just a collaboration amongst teams. So it shouldn't be seen as I can't pick different methodologies and not do DevOps. It's more so a buy-in from everyone in the company. So you can still use Agile frameworks, your daily stand-ups and whatnot, but as long as there's collaborations among the teams and there's a common understanding of what you're trying to achieve, then to me, that's DevOps plus a few more.
We have lots of questions coming through, so I'm going to try and whistle through some of these.
Sure.
How do you communicate technical terms to non-technical users?
I think the easiest way for me is drawing. When I first started at Cancer Research as a junior, again, I had no experience at all. And I sat next to someone who was Russian and couldn't really speak good English. So how he would communicate to me through like issues and how to solve problems was through drawings. And I found that very, very helpful for my learning and understanding. And it's something that I try and carry on myself. So I always, if I can't explain a problem well, I always try and draw, diagrams or boxes to explain what I'm trying to say.
That actually reminds me of one of my first internships where my manager, he loved diagrams so much that he had a very specific pen that he would buy from Japan, I think, which had it was really thin or something. He just loved it, and he loved drawing diagrams. I think that's such a quirky feature of his that I actually remember it today.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Olivia, do you want to take our next question?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thanks, Ryan. There are questions coming in, but I actually have a question myself
Sure.
before we go into the next question. So, I think that what you presented today, Sam, has been really interesting because there have been many times in Fighting True North where we've spoken about failures and even definitions of success. But I think your episode has been really great in embracing failure to its
Yeah.
fullest and not taking failure at face value.
Yeah.
And I actually want to say a quote in leading to my question, and it relates to your American football days, actually. So, actually, I'm not going to mention any American football terms because I do not play American football. But a quote that I do have is by American football player called Russell Wilson, who is
Okay.
the American football quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks
Yep.
in the NFL. So he said once that every setback has a major comeback. And I think that quote encapsulates what you have been through in your presentation and that you've told. And I wanted to ask a question related to your poll question. You were talking about, do you need a computer science degree to get a career in tech?
Yep.
And especially nowadays, you can learn to code on your own. And I guess that kind of gives you an advantage, maybe even going into university, or even if you choose not to go to university at all to enter a career in tech. And in one of your last takeaways, you said that it's good to start programming. But of course, programming can be very difficult and there's lots of setbacks and you can be put off by the failure that you get by trying to execute line one. What would you say to anybody learning how to code, or if anybody is still getting better at coding, but to not be disheartened by the failure in trying to get better and trying to learn?
Yeah, so again, with programming, I think most engineers would say that on the job, there's regular failures where you might have one line of code incorrect, or there's just something wrong with your code. That is so common, that's so regular. That literally happens to me every day. So if someone wants to get a career in tech, especially a technical position with programming, that's something that you need to accept quite early on. It's never going to be smooth sailing. You're never going to write a piece of code where it's just going to work straight away all the time. Accepting that sometimes, we're human beings, we make mistakes, we're prone to mistakes. But it's learning from those mistakes to say, okay, I made this mistake in my code last week. I'm not going to do the same again today, or it might be a different mistake that I make today instead. And that's okay. I feel like the tech community is quite accepting in failures because that's the only way we progress and move forward.
I think that's really interesting, and especially linking that back to university again, and I guess like maybe even the misconceptions of what a degree is meant to teach you, and whether it really prepares you for the world of work. And we do have a question that's come in related to that, which is, I should say, have you ever thought about taking a master's to help develop yourself and your technical knowledge? Now, in your case, you took a coding bootcamp, to which you can arguably say prepared you better than a master's to do what you're doing now. But what do you think to that question?
A big fat hell no. Not right now. I definitely think there's value in getting a master's, but especially in technology, I think you need to be that needs to be quite specialized. So maybe things like machine learning and artificial intelligence, where that's sort of the popular thing right now. Then I can understand why someone would do a master's in that field. But in the software development sort of space, I don't see a need for it. I'd see that as wasting your money, to be fair. A lot of the stuff can be taught online for free. Literally YouTube, I've learned so much of YouTube. I'd say a bit more than my degree, to say, because a lot of the stuff that I learned in my computer science degree, I'm not using in my day-to-day job. So not saying it was a wasted degree. I love the stuff that I learned. I think it's very valued and useful. But even the recruiters nowadays that are hiring for tech roles, I don't think the first thing they look at is if you went to university and studied a degree.
So many things have been popping up in my head as you've been talking. And these questions that are coming in are great. I've had the same question around, is it worth doing a master's, things like that. And I know a few people who've maybe done a master's, I would say maybe for the wrong reasons. It was like, I don't really know what to do, so I might just carry on studying.
Yeah.
And like my personal opinion is like go and do a master's if you're really passionate about an area and you can see why you're doing it.
Exactly.
I completely agree that you learn so much by doing personal projects, YouTube, like going to open forum communities. So like on the side, one of our committee members, David, we actually we're learning React together, and every Sunday we jump on a Zoom call and we do that for like an hour and a half, and it's been really nice. And I'm learning lots from it, kind of, especially when someone can teach you. I think that's a brilliant way of you consolidating your learning. So actually linked back to when you went from a junior role to a senior role at Cancer Research, and you then had to start managing others as well in terms of helping them. Did you find that a big step up? Did it help you in some way? Did you like teaching others?
Yeah, it was definitely very challenging. But for me, I sort of saw it as like a little sibling, because I had experienced what they were going through as well. So for me, it was just, here are some of the like tips and tricks that I used to help me get through my time as a junior, and basically trying to make them feel as comfortable as possible. I think that's the key, because, you know, when you first start a role, especially as a junior, it could be very, very intimidating. If no one chats to you, if you're not, you know, felt comfortable, then that could be quite tough. So for me, I just saw it as an opportunity to basically make new friends, make more friends, to be fair.
Taking every opportunity. To be fair, it's really good because I think mentoring others, essentially this is the whole ethos of Tech Allies Network, but it's something that I think as young professionals, it's a duty that we have. There's so much that can be changed in the industry that we're entering. And I think it's up to us to make a difference in whatever way that we can. And mentoring is such a beautiful way of doing it. And I wanted to know, why do you think mentoring is so important to you? Is it maybe mentoring that you've had in the past, or maybe something that you thought was lacking?
Yeah. For me, it's the mentoring that I've had in the past. Again, like touching back to my last job at Cancer Research, when I first started as a junior, my boss mentored me. So like, I'm so grateful for the opportunities that he gave me. I learned so much. And for me, I saw that as a space where I don't feel like a lot of, especially the younger generation, are aware of some of the opportunities that are in tech, especially with the whole climate today with like A-levels being different results and whatnot. I definitely feel like there is a space for people to get more involved in tech. I think there's a common saying, and I think this is still a true fact, that there are more tech roles out there than there are people filling in. So with people, you know, not being able to find jobs, I definitely feel that there's an opportunity for especially the younger generation to be exposed to some of these opportunities.
Just building on, I'm really struggling between the questions that are coming in, the questions that I have. I get this question, it's sort of one that I have, but it's also one that came up earlier today. If you think about the environment, there's lots of people who I think that's happening with A-level results as well, and you've got GCSE results coming up as well. There may be people who aren't going to study for the next year, or actually those who are graduating. may find it really tough to get a job. So there's potentially a lot of people who are going to have, you know, a period of unemployment. And you mentioned how you had about a year unemployment where you decided to do a code boot camp. You know, what would be your, this is a two-pronged question. What would be your advice on, one, just like mentally how you should approach this? Like, you know, how should you be resilient? And equally, like, what are some of the things you can go and do? So you mentioned boot camps, but what else? Actually, what went through your mind when you were in that situation?
The situation of me being in a boot camp.
Well, just the moment where you were unemployed and you had to go and do something.
Well, firstly, my parents weren't letting me be unemployed and do nothing at all. You know,
they didn't accept the reality. They're like, the reality has to change.
you're gonna be working soon, and yeah, you're gonna find a way to do it. So that was my first motivation. But again, like I knew that I wanted to get into the tech industries, and I did a lot of research online. So a lot of forums like Reddit is very, very useful, where you could just throw in your questions in different tech forums to ask what are the specific skills that I need for a particular role, and people would answer them, as well as YouTube videos. And I started to build like this sheet of things that I needed to cover off. So particular programming language. And I also did things like daily affirmations. So a few of my friends have seen it where literally this time 5 years ago, I had listed particular things that I wanted to accomplish. So things like building a mobile app, learning a particular technology, being on a particular salary. And I would basically take daily steps to try and achieve those goals. So daily affirmations help loads because it just keeps you believing in yourself.
And I can take on that rhyme works because I can see I've noticed through this series, I can tell when you're thinking. I will leave you to think more whilst I ask this question from the audience. Along that, on trying to believe in yourself, we actually have a very good question from someone who's tuned in. So thank you so much for someone who's asked this question. They say, I want to start mentoring others, but I'm not confident in myself. How do you start or be able to help mentor others? That's a very interesting question. I'll allow you to continue, but Brian's probably going to say Tech Allies Network is one way you can do that. I'm a volunteer through Tech Allies Network. Brian runs it, but I'm sure Sam has other advice to give you as well.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
So the question is, well, they say, I want to start mentoring others, but I'm not confident in myself. How do you start or be able to mentor others?
I think one easy way to do it is by reaching out to, I don't know, family members, younger family members, potentially also reaching out to people who you've seen as a mentor before, and seeking advice on basically helping build your confidence. Because I feel like with mentoring, it's easy to understand certain things yourself, but you need to have a different level of understanding when you're teaching others and mentoring others. So again, you're going to go through mistakes and problems, but it's being able to work through that, I think is key.
I think just building upon that, I'm a firm believer that anyone can be a mentor because there's always someone else who's one step behind you. So if you're in, say, university, have you thought about mentoring someone who's a sixth former or someone who's in college? If you're in sixth form, like there's probably someone who's doing their GCSEs that you can mentor. There's probably something that you don't have to be an expert in, but you might know more than someone else and you can help them. And equally, the power of peer mentoring. And I kind of feel like this is what happens with, or what is happening with David, one of our committee members, and I. So we're doing these coding sessions together. I think David's an expert, but he'd probably be like, I'm not an expert at all. I'm still learning it. So we have that kind of understanding of, he's still learning, but he gets to teach me because I'm a couple steps behind.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always someone you can find to mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to try and wrap up some of these questions into one because there's a lot coming up around skills. So what are the most transferable skills through all of your roles, and how important do you think soft skills are in the tech world, probably at now compared to before, and why? So that was a lot of questions. Do you want me to repeat any?
So transferable skills and soft skills.
Pretty much, yeah.
So some of the transferable skills in my role. So from a technical level, I'd say learning about different cloud providers. So Amazon Web Services. I started learning that at my bootcamp, and I haven't every stage since I've used Amazon Web Services. So I think that's a skill that I've used across the board. Infrastructure as code, so code using to build infrastructure and servers. That's something again that I started using at my bootcamp, and I've used it ever since. So I think from a technical level, just to wrap it up, like using a programming language and a cloud provider, in particularly if you want to get into the DevOps space. And soft skills are vital. I think soft skills are so overlooked in technical roles, because you need to, as an engineer, you need to be able to articulate yourself and understand problems and gain feedback from the end customer, whether it's your product team or whether it's the actual customer using your application. I think there needs to be a level of soft skills that, again, I think I've been quite lucky to gain, just because of me playing team sports. I've had to work with others, even if I didn't want to. So I got to learn, how to collaborate with others quite early on.
Something which you just said that reminded me of an experience I actually spoke about today. Was I remember being at university, going to do an internship. I thought actually my technical skills weren't that great, but I thought the soft skills were okay around presenting. Mm-hmm. Then I actually got on the internship and realized, if anything, it was the other way, because I actually loved the problem solving side and really loved, coding, but found that when it came to presenting, I really had to learn, how do I present a technical topic and how do I present this code that I've been essentially working on? Have you had any of those experiences of how you've had to, kind of links to a previous question actually about talking about technical terms?
It's a tough one, because you want, like, as a software engineer, you want to be able to talk about what you've done and it's exciting and it's cool and whatnot, but then you can't lose the audience. I know my boss at Novastone, Brendan, he does a really good job of presenting really, really well, where I feel like anyone understands what he says. So I always try and imitate his presenting style, because again, you really don't want to lose the audience, but then you also don't want to miss out on explaining some of the, it might be complex things that you've achieved through your code.
I think that's really good advice, and I can completely relate to that. So with my university experience, very technical environment, but I developed most of my soft skills through extracurriculars, whether it was student radio, whether it was journalism, and even sports as well. But I found there was a really big difference in trying to communicate a technical message or a technical system when you're in the same department compared to when you are, when you're outside of your department. So an example was when Entrepreneur first started. So Matt Clifford, who's one of the founders, I met him at my university. This is the time when Entrepreneur first had their basement office. And one thing he said was, "Oh, who would like to present an idea?" And I put my hand up. because that's what I do sometimes, actually just before a sports game. And I had this idea in my mind, and I had to communicate it to these group of students who are all very different degrees. And I said it, I was like, yeah, that's great. Looks over to Matt, who's like, yeah, that's great. But then when the question was, who would like to buy this product, or who understands it, hardly anybody put their hand up. And so it made me realize that in some sense, although I may have, liked my vision, I failed in trying to communicate maybe how that system was put into context and why it would be of interest to the person listening. And I think there's so much we can gather from that. It's important, and I guess you can agree that when trying to talk about something technical, it's more than can your peers understand it. It's whether can that vision go beyond where you're working and beyond your field, because otherwise the trajectory of that idea will always fall short. And I do have a question. It's not just me talking about myself. I do have a question. So you mentioned about fitness, and I wanted to understand if there was any application between kind of a sporting and fitness mindset to your technical mindset. So, for example, with football, you, as I've written here, you adopt the mindset for self-preservation and discipline, such as routine, positive self-talk, maybe even utilizing visualization and more. And how much has your sporting mindset affected your mindset for tech? And if there has been an effect, how has it affected it?
Yeah, it definitely has affected my mindset for tech. In sports, like you said, you have to be disciplined in wanting to achieve your goals, whether it's waking up 6 a.m. every morning and working out, and things like that can be translated to, I'm going to spend an extra hour every day doing this Udemy course. So in my mind, they are the same thing. Nothing worth doing is going to come easy. So whether it's I need to lose weight, or I want to run faster, or I want a faster time while I'm running, or I want to learn a new programming language, or there's this project that I'm working on and I need to be able to talk about it, and I want to improve on my presentation skills. I feel like all of those goals and aims, based on me coming from a sporting background, I see them all as the same. So I'm going to sort of attack those the same way. So if it means me spending, 5 hours every day trying to learn how to do something, whereas before I would spend the same amount in the gym, to me, again, I see them all the same.
So just taking a different direction, actually, going back to the poll results, I'm not too surprised, actually. So the question was, do you need a degree to start a career in technology? Yes, not sure, no. So no one said yes. 20% said not sure, but 80% said no, which I'm actually quite happy with, because there are lots of different routes into tech. Was there a reason why you asked this question?
Yeah, because I was just interested to see where people's minds are at with the current as well, because I know a lot of my peers my age who did computer science as well, we're currently in tech roles, and we all agree that we probably didn't need this degree to land the job that we're in right now. So we just want to make sure that the younger generation understand that the same pressures that we had, whether it's I need to do A-levels or I need a degree, that shouldn't still be the same thing in today's climate. It should be, oh, I can do this internship, or I could do a boot camp instead. I feel like those should be as equally as valued as having a degree, and there's less debt that way as well.
I think it's a really good opportunity to also mention that apprenticeships are something that have really been recently, both degree apprenticeships and non-degree apprenticeships. Actually, they probably weren't really a big thing when we were all studying, but would you ever, if you went back, Sam, and that was an option, would you have considered it?
Most likely, if the fit was there. Again, if it was a thing where I could do some technical work and I'm getting paid for it as well, yeah, why not? Why not?
One of the questions that came in, I don't want to bash universities. I want to equal balance discussion. Do you think university has been helpful for you? And I guess I want to open this up to any of us to maybe we've all done degrees.
Yep.
What was helpful from doing a degree?
Oof. Perseverance as well. Keeping disciplined, because having to, from going to a system where in college and schools where your teachers are there to help you throughout the problems, whereas at university it's you sort of have to do learning yourself. So you develop a sense of independence through that. And I definitely do feel like the times that we spend at university are definitely pivotal moments in all of our lives, from being able to, survive on your own, whether you moved out of home. And yeah, I definitely feel like that's something that shouldn't be overlooked as well.
What about yourself, Olivia? You've done a PhD. You've gone the full way.
Yeah, I mean, that was why, like, if you're watching on YouTube, you probably would have seen a moment where it looked like I was like clutching my pearls at the point where someone suggested that you didn't need a degree to study tech. To be fair, I was talking about degree apprenticeships because I've been so inspired by this series. And if I was to do university again, I probably would have considered a degree apprenticeship. Just because I think even when doing a degree, it doesn't mean that you're 100% probability of getting an internship. And internships are so fundamental in understanding the world of work and actually ensuring that you have a job in the end. And I think if you can go through a program that guarantees that in some sense, it's really beneficial to have. In terms of my own personal university experience, I think what really benefited me, if I take away all the extracurriculars and I just focus on the degree itself, I think it gave me exposure to how the industry could be. Especially when you move up to PhD, you kind of see things that are like maybe 30 years ahead of what's happening in industry. And the idea of being exposed to that now, it completely changes your perspective when you come into industry. But of course, industry is really exciting, and I've worked with people, and even what I'm doing now in terms of like doing little bits of UX and UAT, I did not need a degree to do those. However, I think a degree does give you a really great foundation, and of course, it gives you the contacts, whether it's with your own peers or even people who are influential in your field, such as academically. Those are really helpful to have. But Ryan, how about you? What's your experience like?
So I love one of the questions that came in, not questions, comments more than anything. So I defo believe I could have learned everything relevant that uni taught me in the space of 6 months and not have the 70k debt.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. I always find it quite interesting because I think people joke that I'm always a student. I always have a student discount card because I like studying part-time and work. But for me, there's so much that I want to do that actually, where I've gone and done a course, whether it's a formal course or one on the side, it forces me to learn stuff that I really am interested in, but I just don't make enough time for. It's not that I don't have enough time, it's just I haven't made enough time for it. So for me, I'm still studying, and what's great is it's forced me to make the time to study these really interesting things that I just wouldn't have made time for. So I think it does really depend on the individual. We don't, I guess, what we've just said, there's positives and negatives to both. There is no one route.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Olivia, there is another question on Slido, which I'll let you ask, actually.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. So yeah, this is a very good question. So again, thank you so much for asking this question, whoever you are. They say, Sam, where do you see your career going in the future, and what opportunities do you think DevOps roles can lead to?
Oh, where do I see my career in the future?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm very split.
Mm.
Very, very split. I'm sort of split between staying in more of a technical role, where I'm getting my hands dirty, to being in a more senior role where I get to make more decision making. But with that, I do need more experience. So yeah, I'm still quite split, and I'm in no rush to find out which way I'm going yet. What was the second part of your question?
Yeah, the second part is, what opportunities do you think DevOps roles can lead to?
What opportunities could DevOps roles lead to? So I think if you do get a role in DevOps, that could lead to being a platform engineer, a site reliability engineer, a sysadmin, software tester. Like, I think you can go anywhere on the spectrum in tech, because you've got that foundation of working with different technologies, working with different systems. And yeah, I don't feel like employers will overlook that. So if you do land a job in DevOps and you want to maybe move around into a different position, I definitely feel like that is more of an advantage than a disadvantage.
That's really great. And Ryan, I just wanted to ask, unless you have your own question, there's something that's coming about inspiration. Did you want to ask that?
I was just going to ask that. It came in too early, and I'm saving this for one of the last questions.
Sure.
I'll take this question and expand it, because it says, who inspires you, and have there been any kind of like key role models, is what I want to add to that.
Yeah, so that's easy. I'd say my mom for sure. My mom is my role model, and she inspires me so much. From where she came from, to raising 3 kids, with my dad as well. Yeah, I don't want to get too much into it, I'll get emotional, but yeah, my mom is by far like an inspiration to me. She is the reason why I keep going, and I feel like the reason I've got my drive is all down to my mom, by far.
An idea that's just sprung to mind, because this has been a common theme that's come up, is maybe we should do a series where we talk to the parents of everyone, because we've had previous episodes.
They'll come with stories. Some of them will be embarrassing.
Yes,
and it will be live. It cannot be edited out.
I mean, Mumsy, she can do that. As long as I'm not there, I'm cool with that. I don't need to do any of it. That's fine.
Oh, that's brilliant. Olivia, anything from you before we talk about what's coming up next?
Oh, I know, this has been such a really cool episode, and there's so many things I could ask. Okay. Right. So when when you transitioned from your role from junior to senior in cancer research,
Yep.
You mentioned that you had to not lead a team, but you had to take ownership of a direction in that role. And I wanted to know that were there any benefits that came from figuring things out on your own and learning things as you went along, as opposed to having an organized structure in that circumstance?
Again, it came down to decision making. Being in that sort of environment sort of leads you to make decisions a lot quicker. And again, even though that did happen, I did have quite a strong support system in my boss at the time. So I could always lean on him for advice and help. Yeah, like, even though it was very, very challenging, it's something that I owned, and I sort of love doing as well. And actually, a funny story about me moving over to senior, it was actually because when I joined as a junior, we had a team of 6, and within around, I think, 7 months, everyone had left. So I, by default, was the most senior. So I ended up applying for the senior role, and it was a bit crazy to me because we had hired people who were more experienced than me, but then I was their senior, so it was a bit awkward at times. But yeah, for me, like job title doesn't really matter too much as long as we're in the same team, we've got the same goals. If I'm asking you all the questions and I'm a senior, then good on you. So.
There's been a really good question that's come in, and it'll be the last one.
Yeah.
So what is DevOps? The word gets thrown around a lot. Can you give a simple explanation? I know you've discussed it earlier, but if you was to sum up this episode and leave that one message, DevOps is, finish that sentence.
DevOps is an ethos. It's a way of working between a collection of teams that are involved in the software lifecycle to achieve one goal.
Very nicely put.
So, yeah.
Great. So if we move on to the next slide, we can actually discuss what we're going to do with the rest of these questions.
Great. So this has been a great engaged episode. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. And Sam, thank you so much for talking about DevOps, but also how you've navigated through your career up till now. It's been great having you on. And if you enjoyed Sam's episode like we did, we'll be answering some more Q&A. So still have those questions coming in. They will be put in a episode highlight document, so you can have Sam's slides and also written answers to those questions. And that will be released as a PDF on Friday, the 21st of August, and it'll be published on the Tech Allies Network website, specifically on the Finding True North webpage, which you can see on your screen now, and in the YouTube description. Next week, we'll be back Wednesday, the 26th of August at 5 o'clock. And it will probably be our last Finding True North episode of 2020. Which I'm whispering because probably I'm in denial, but it's going to be the last episode of this series. And Ryan, do you want to explain who we have on? Do you want me to explain?
I feel like you have such a good story because it's your friend.
Yeah, so her name is Yasmin Ali. She's a chartered chemical engineer who now works in the government, working on funding sustainability projects, and trying to fight climate change. She is an embellished engineer, and she's the perfect example of doing corporate work, but also doing journalism. So she's presented on the BBC, she's done articles for the Metro, and she's going to talk to us about that dual life, but also how it comes to one vision. I'm so excited to have her on Finding True North and to explain more on her journey. Until then, Sam, thank you once again for being part of it. And also thank you to Sam's friends and the audience tuning in for being so engaged as well. Sam, do you have any final words?
No, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on, Ryan and Olivia. Yeah, it's been great doing this. I need to do this more often.
I have two thank yous. Obviously, a big thank you to you, Sam. I've loved this session and I've learned a lot. But also, thank you to Maheen, a previous guest, who's the person who recommended you. We would not have known you existed unless she had recommended you. So I think it's a great takeaway. I think everyone knows people that we can be lifting up and promoting. So yeah, see you all next week for our last episode of 2020.